All statements and opinions expressed by guests of the Adult in the Room podcast are strictly their own and do not necessarily reflect the beliefs or opinions of the host, producers, or advertisers. All interviews are presented in their most complete possible form in the interests of free speech. No statements should be interpreted as financial, legal, or medical advice. Listener and viewer discretion are strongly advised.
It's the Adult in the Room podcast with Victoria Taft. That's me.
Well, what do you know? Happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. How's it going? It's just great to be here on a St. Patty's Day. Got a little Irish music for you from Ireland 2 years ago. Stand by. Just a little bit. I'm not going to play a lot. Leave it to Americans to take another country's excitement and day of the year that they celebrate, especially a church holiday, which is what this is, St. Patrick's Day. Started in the church, everybody, St. Patrick. And then what do we do with it? We make a drinking holiday out of it. That's exactly, Cinco de Mayo. The Mexicans barely even celebrate that day. We just celebrate it in the United States. We check that, we go, oh yeah, it's got to be Mexican Independence Day. No, it's not. No. And neither is this. This is not an Independence Day thing. It's a church holiday. And happy St. Patrick's Day to you, Jordan. Thank you so much. It's awesome. That is fantastic. Oh, and then they abruptly, I got some dancers coming up later, but there we are. That was lovely already. It actually will switch up the mood because we're going to talk about the Iran sitrep, what's going on there, what is the situation report from Iran, and what's going on, what it means to us. Joe Kent leaves his position at the Counterterrorism Center, and the SAVE Act is being debated, at least the decision to bring it to a possible vote is being debated on the floor of the Senate, which is just extraordinary that you actually have to tell people that an 80% issue plus of Americans of all stripes want voter ID. Here, let me put my hair back. Voter ID, and they don't want it. What is the deal with all the Democrats not wanting to have voter ID? What is the deal with three key Republicans not wanting to have voter ID? What the hell is wrong with you people? God! Ah! Yeah. Anyway, we're going to be joined by a new friend from the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies coming up in just a moment. And so we will talk about that, all of those things today on the Adult in the Room podcast. So I definitely want you to stick around for that, as well as the SAVE Act information coming up a little bit later. And I appreciate the fact that some of you have enjoyed the Irish music. Good. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Let us get a sit rep from the guy who does the sit rep for us. He's the guy in charge. Let's see how much we've degraded Iran's artillery and power.
I'm Admiral Brad Cooper, the commander of U.S. Central Command, here to provide another update on Operation Epic Fury. First, I want to remember and honor our fallen warriors who made the ultimate sacrifice in the KC-135 refueling aircraft incident last week. We hold their memories and their families, their friends and their teammates in our prayers. Their selfless service and dedication hardens our resolve. For 16 days, we've delivered overwhelming firepower deep into Iran. This past Friday, U.S. forces executed a large-scale precision strike on Karg Island, destroying more than 90 Iranian military targets, including storage bunkers for naval mines and missiles and other military infrastructure. To date, our Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps aviators have collectively flown more than 6,000 combat flights, demonstrating the unmatched capability of America's joint force as we maintain air superiority over Iranian skies. We continue to remain centered on our military objectives. These are well-defined and include eliminating Iran's ballistic missiles, drones, and naval threats. It's one thing to defend by striking launchers and intercepting missiles and drones, but it's another thing to eliminate the wider manufacturing apparatus behind them. And we are doing that today.
Now, this is my favorite part of the sitrep from the CENTCOM commander, and that is, you ever watch those TV shows and you always want to get to the part where on the decorating shows, even guys, hey, how'd that project come out? Did it look good? Well, let's see the before and the after pictures. Well, here's the before and talk to our friends from the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Hold on.
We've talked about it in concept. Here's what it looks like in reality. Let me show you, for the first time, a few examples of how we are dismantling Iran's defense industrial base, which will prevent threats to the region into the future. Here you see a photo from March 1st of a naval drone storage facility located near the Strait of Hormuz. This is the same location 8 days later, completely destroyed. Next, here's a photo taken of an attack drone production factory in Tehran on March 5th. Here's that same factory 6 days later after a devastating barrage of U.S. airstrikes. As
I say, it's like watching HGTV, but in reverse. And so you see what used to be there and how we've improved it. So I hope there's not much loss of life, obviously, but I'm joking around because those are sort of the hard and fast things that you can't deny. Oh yeah, it was there before because we have the satellite photos to show you, and then it's gone. So that's part of our sitrep on Iran, and that today, and we'll do the SAVE Act coming up. By the way, SAVE Act is a national security issue. Why is it that there are so many people who will vote against it today? That's just shocking, actually. So we'll get into the details of that coming up in just a minute. But I did want to welcome for the first time to the Room podcast his gentleman that who's an Iran hand. He makes his life, or has in the past, makes his life in Tehran. Jonathan Sayeh, who's with the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. And I appreciate you coming on today, and thank you so much for doing so. Thank you. How are you today?
It's great to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. Well, we have a lot of folks who wonder about what's really going on. We've got a lot of atmosphere. There's the signal, and then there's the noise. And there's a hell of a lot of noise right now, if you don't mind my French. And I just want to know, after the deaths of a couple of leaders in Iran, who's running this joint anyway?
That's a fair question. There's different ways of answering it, really. But the short answer is no one. And I think the way to look at it is the regime has been set up in a way that it doesn't need a major command structure for it to inform mid-level and lower-level officials on what to do. Now, unpacking this a little bit further, in this context, we'd be looking at assassinations that have taken out a lot of the military officials, but not that many political officials. There's still a lot of them. So the guy that was taken out today, Larijani, he was both political and military. He was like here and there at the same time. But a lot of these people that have led the quote-unquote civilian side of the Iranian regime, even though we know none of them are really civilians, that said, they're still in power. So they can still make decision as things are going on. But then again, the apparatus was structured so that a mid-level commander or foot soldiers in this context would know exactly what to do during times of crisis. They know they're supposed to attack U.S. bases, Israel, and civilian infrastructure. And once that phase is done and they're out of missiles and they're out of sights, then they look inward, preventing protests to take place. getting more into the repression side of things. We see them set up checkpoints. And of course, I know we have a lot to unpack here, but the other angle of really going about this is how Israel has been going after a very hyper-local targeting of some of these squads and units.
So you're saying nobody's in charge, but we're doing a good job of getting rid of people who have been in charge. So are we, I guess, looking down the road a little bit as we go along, are we possibly looking at a civil war?
Depends how it really plays out. Also, when we say no one's really in charge, it's more so to say there's not one person that's calling all the shots. It's mostly the IRGC carrying out a lot of operations. I know we talked about the son Mojtaba. It's debatable whether he's even alive. And even if he was, I don't think his opinion would differ from that of the IRGCs. So no matter who would be calling the shots in this time frame, they're going to be advocating for the same thing. But of course, we've done an excellent job taking out the command structure, but there's still plenty of more Larijani's to take out. As to whether we would see prospects of the civil war, listen, it comes down to how we're going to go about systemic change in Iran. If we're going to really empower the Iranian people to go after these oppressors, whether we're going to leverage the opposition led by Crown Prince Pahlavi, or if we're going to go down the separatist route, if we're going to empower different terror networks inside country, go about empowering Kurds or different militias that have a history of separatism, that of course is going to have major ramifications. But nonetheless, this is all to say, these guys are not going to go without a fight. They're here for martyrdom. Their paradigm is different than ours. They know what they've done. They know they're not going to be forgiven. So getting defections from them is going to be very challenging.
Yeah. Well, who was this guy? Larijani. Is he the besieged guy? Who are these people and what?
Sure.
Did?
So the besieged guy is the one next to Larijani. Larijani, the individual in the military personnel, that's the besieged guy. And what the besieged is, it's a paramilitary organization operating under the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. They're seen as mostly vigilantes, but it's these guys that are opening fire on the masses. They're critical with internal repression. Yeah. That's what's really important about the besieged. And Larijani, as to who he really was part of a kleptocratic clan. The Larijani family has his hands across Iranian politics. He was just one of the brothers, the most influential one, and he was the secretary of the National Security Council of Iran. So again, the decision making was real. And another angle of looking at it, he was the main point of contact with Moscow. So this is going to hinder Tehran's ability to maintain ties to Putin should they need more assistance throughout the war.
How are Trump and Netanyahu doing prosecuting this war?
So far, it's been quite precise, and it's been really going based on schedule. There's an interesting division of labor between the United States and Israel. So the U.S., if you look at the statements from CENTCOM, they're going after large-scale targets, if you will. They're going after naval assets, sites, manufacturing capabilities. There's a lot of overlap. This is not to say there's a clear, distinct line between what they're doing, but that has been really the American focus. You look at Israelis, of course, they're also doing some of these stuff as well. They're going after drone bases or different facilities that are actually constructing some of these projectiles. But in addition to that, Israelis are the ones going after targeted assassinations, and they're the ones carrying out a lot of the urban strikes, which tells you that it's the Israelis that are trying to pave the way for systemic change. It comes down to how we're going to destroy some of these bases that kill Iranians inside. And Israelis have been the one taking charge in that, and they're the ones that are most transparent with their communication to Iranians. Frequently, they post in Persian language media talking to Iranians that your time is near, and they always highlight how many of these guys they've taken out, meaning we're facilitating the way, but everyone is aligned, Jerusalem and Washington, on that it ultimately comes down to the Iranian people. This is not regime change from above. It's about facilitating the conditions so Iranians can define their own destiny.
I understand that Iranians don't have any internet, notwithstanding the fact that Starlink has been dropped in multiple places. But do we need to have more Starlink connections? I mean, they need to know what's going on their behalf.
They certainly do, but I've picked up on an interesting pattern. Of course, internet is out. I think it's been the longest internet outage. But looking at information coming from Iran right now, compared to January, which we saw the largest uprising against the regime, where about 40,000 Iranians were killed, unarmed citizens were massacred on the street. During that wave, about a week, there was absolutely zero information coming out from Iran. But now, contrast that, even though it's been technically a total outage, we still get information coming in, which tells you, I think there was some contingency plans after the January wave to ensure that Iranians would have some access to internet. You point out Starlink, I think that's been crucial. But I'm sure there's other VPNs and other aspects. Of course, on the other hand, Israelis have been taking out some of this buildings and infrastructure that is tasked with censorship. So that we've also destroyed, or weakened at least, Tehran's ability to block its citizens from outside information. In addition to that, you have satellite channel. Even though they try to jam that a lot of the times, still a lot of Iranians, and I remember going up there a lot of times, we mostly relied on satellite TV. Now internet is a bigger thing, but you still watch Persian language diaspora broadcasts all the time. You still get information as often as you can. So there are measures in place.
I'm reading here in the Wall Street Journal in this late-breaking story, the attacks on Iran's security chief and the head of the besieged militia could make leaders more cautious, complicating, but Russia's sharing satellite imagery and drone technology with Iran. Does that disturb you, or has that just been going on forever?
Are you talking about the Moscow-Tehran relationship in this context?
Well, I guess. I mean, they're sharing, well, clearly, but I mean, I think they're sharing information which is critical information for this very, very moment. And I mean, now, what are we looking at? A world war here? I'm just like,
I know what you mean. But let's compare this to how Russia was defending Assad in the mid-2000s when there was a civil war in Syria. They stepped in militarily. They had bases in Syria. They were fighting on behalf of the Assad regime. They were arming some of these guys. But now Russia has been weakened to the extent that they rely on Iranian weapons to begin with. So comparing how they stepped in last time compared to this wave, it's not even comparable. They're only sharing intelligence. I think that another way of looking at it is Moscow is more or less seeing Tehran as maybe a burnt asset. They find the regime in Tehran to be too volatile of a decision maker, a bit irrational, if you will. I think the way that Iranian regime officials went after targeting civilian infrastructure as a primary form of carrying out attacks across the Persian Gulf, I think that sent the wrong message to a lot of different leaders around the world, even their allies or partners. But that said, the Russia-Tehran relationship has been mostly benefiting Russia as opposed to Tehran. I can't imagine anyone in the Islamic Republic is happy about it, but they gotta work with the hand that they're dealt.
Yeah, Strait of Hormuz. I know I gotta let you go, but I mean, is there a way around this to open this thing up? I know it's open, but not to us.
Yes, it's not open to a lot of different entities. I think only Chinese ships are the ones that get to go through, which tells you a lot about what the Islamic Republic's allies are. With that, the issue comes down to drones over missiles. And I think that's something maybe a lot didn't calculate to this extent. We took out a lot of their ballistic missiles, but they still have thousands of drones. I think more than maybe some had speculated. And that's what they're using to target some of these vessels as they're crossing the strait. And that's the challenge there. So I know we talked about occupying an island in the Persian Gulf, but that said, because of these missiles, the challenge is that we don't really have enough to protect boots on the ground for that. So ultimately, I think comes down to entering the next phase of the war and actually ensuring that Tehran is going to be so occupied with internal unrest that they're not going to have enough really resources to go about the Strait of Hormuz. That's the only way I think we can go about this, at least in the short term. But the drones are a real issue right now.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I know you've got to go. Jonathan Sayeh from the Foundation for the Defense of America, for the Defense of Democracies. For the Defense of America is fine with me too.
They are.
I just want those bastards out of there. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Don't we all? Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, of course, we've got things that are in the way of success. And part of the success that I'd like to see is the oil flowing again, because I don't know about you and I, they war for oil. Okay, well, fine, fair enough, because I think it's true. But the thing is that oil is energy. Energy is productivity. Productivity is GDP, or whatever it is called in any nation around the globe. And that means success, and it means thriving as a nation. So we turn now to Dr. Steve Bonta, who's looking at this economy aspect of the war in Iran. And thank you so much for coming on The Adult in the Room. I really appreciate you coming on the live stream today. How are you, sir?
I'm fine. Although it's snowed in at the moment. I'm in the upper Midwest, and we just had 2 feet of snow.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of fun.
There's no getting out right now.
Oh, I'm sorry for you. I'm happy for the kids. Snow day. Yay.
Absolutely. 2 snow days so far.
How many?
2 so far.
Okay, there you go. Oh, man. Okay, well, what are the ramifications of the oil spike in prices and all of these things that I think are really important, obviously? Read the tea leaves for us, if you would.
Well, I appreciate what your previous guest said, kind of putting in the broader context that none of this is unprecedented. He pointed to what happened with Syria a few years ago. And going further back, obviously, I'm old enough to remember the first Persian Gulf War and all of the alarms that were raised in the press before that, and oh my goodness, Saddam Hussein with his 1,000,000-man army, hardened veterans from the war with Iran, and that it's going to drive, all this stuff, and none of those apocalyptic things came to pass. And what we're seeing right now with oil prices is, of course, is very predictable. A price shock, and it's to be expected. People wonder, well, how is it that we don't even get most of our oil from the Middle East? We get roughly 30% of our oil from other countries, but roughly half of that comes from Canada, which doesn't really count. Okay, so we are not, as a country, terribly dependent on the Middle East the way Europe and the Far East is. It does affect them. And of course, oil is a global asset. So there's going to be, war inevitably brings price shocks. It's force majeure. That's what happens. Mm-hmm. But, if there's a concern, it's, how much is this going to cost in the long run? Obviously. I think, I'm cautiously optimistic. I certainly share your sentiment and that of your previous guests that I will weep no tears at the demise of this regime.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the fact that both the United States and Israel seem to be trying to avoid, an occupation regime change by us, installation of a dictator that we like rather than a dictator that doesn't like us. That kind of nonsense that we've seen, replayed far too often.
We are sending some Marines, but not in country, but around. So that disturbs me.
But anytime there's a war in the Middle East, the cynics always say, "Oh, it's just about oil," and yes, oil is involved. That's part of it. But if you think this is just about oil, you haven't been paying attention for the last 50 years. In fact, we fought a war with Iran once before, under the Reagan administration, the so-called tanker war, where Iran tried back in the late 1980s to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, started indiscriminately firing on tankers, laying mines and stuff like this, and and Reagan responded by attacking Iranian gunboats. Most of their navy in those days was small motorboats with a machine gun mounted in the back, that kind of thing. And so people forget about that. And there was some disruption of the world supply back then too. But guess what? We got through it, and we will get through this. It's also significant, of course, that even what's going on in Iran is partly at least offset by the fact that we now have de facto control of the oil assets in Venezuela. So there's that.
Absolutely crucial. Obviously, that came up first. There are no accidents here, right?
It's all planned. And I'm sure you're aware that even as we speak, that there's a revolution underway in Cuba.
I know.
And that's largely in response to the fact that their oil supply has been cut off. That's the story no one's paying attention to. And that is, in some ways, perhaps more significant, at least for us here in the Western Hemisphere, that finally, Cuba, which is really the mothership. It's been called the mothership of all the, all the Marxist regimes here in the Western Hemisphere, and all the trouble that has caused us going all the way back to Bay of Pigs and the Cuban Missile Crisis. Boy, people have short memories there too.
Yes.
And no doubt, if we weren't more embroiled in Iran, the same people who are saying we shouldn't be doing this would be urging caution and hands off Cuba and all the rest of this. But that's another story.
Are you up on your military information by any chance? Because I've got a question, and I've been thinking about it, and I I wanted to ask our previous guest, but I'll ask you. For example, like we are going to have to clear the Strait of Hormuz. We're going to have to make it possible to get ships through there. And because currently Lloyd's of London has it shut down because nobody wants to take incoming, obviously. But I'm thinking like autonomous ships now. Can you just, well, you want to see a video of one? I'll just show it to you and we'll see. It's not a minesweeper. It's not an anti-mine ship, but I mean, I could see possibly using something like this to take incoming to find out where the incoming fire is coming from and then getting rid of it. I mean, just a thought. Here, I got to turn this guy on. Oh, wait, hold on. I have to make sure.
Basically a drone ship.
It's a drone ship. That's exactly what it is. Yeah. Hold on. I'm going to pull it up again because I was just thinking they just retired a bunch of minesweepers, and I don't know to the extent that you could make sure, sort of throw this autonomous, jerry rig those old ones with this new technology, but there's this.
Its name, the USX-1 Defiant. It's the first fully autonomous naval vessel ever built. A fitting title for a ship that developers say could revolutionize naval engineering for years to come.
Autonomy really means they're able to sail safely without humans on board. They're able to operate with humans on board.
Defiant is the culmination of 5 years of work by the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA. The ship would carry cargo or even be equipped with weapons, but DARPA says it would always be supervised by a crew, never operating weaponry on its own.
We still have destroyers. Destroyers are still doing their job. But now the destroyers have a bunch of these operating in conjunction with those destroyers.
It takes away the safety risks of having personnel on board the ships, and it also drastically reduces the cost and the size of a typical ship. It's also quicker to build, with the Nichols Brothers boat builders and Everett Ship Repair lending a key hand in that process.
So this is a Washington State story where we're talking about this kind of a ship out there. Maybe sacrifice it.
I'm not sure that having one floating and operational is very different from having one integrated into the larger command and control structure of the military. I'm assuming that that's not really been accomplished yet. I do know, as far as next generation aircraft are concerned, the concept is that before long we're going to have, I think even the F-47 that they're working on, the idea is that it will be able to operate with a bunch of drones. So we will literally have the mothership of science fiction with a bunch of drones that will disperse from it, in a combat formation, and will be, semi-autonomous. And one assumes that this same concept is being developed where the Navy is concerned. However, I don't know that any of that is actually operational yet. So, in the near run, again, I think that the crisis in the Strait of Hormuz is being overblown because the press and the politicians desperately want Trump to fail. Mm-hmm. And I mean, the two people they hate the most, Trump and Netanyahu, are leading this thing. So of course they want them to fail. And the reality seems to be, and sources like 2CTV, in my view, are much more reliable as to what's actually going on. And the reality seems to be that pretty much almost all of their mine laying capacity has been destroyed. Most of their Navy is gone. The volume of missiles and drones that they're able to launch at all per diem is down to a fraction of what it was in the first couple of days of the war. Yeah. And even if that were not so, for all of its geographical size, Iran is not anywhere near being a first-tier military power, any more than, as it turned out, Saddam Hussein was. Although, frankly, relative to our power at the time when we first went to war with Iraq back, more than 30 years ago in the early 1990s, I would say that Iraq probably stood a better chance against the U.S. Of course, it was not just the U.S. It was a larger coalition that was assembled for Operation Desert Storm. But had we taken them on, or we in Israel, and Israel sat that war out, be it remembered. They actually endured a barrage of Scud missiles from Iraq and didn't do anything at the urging of then President Bush, who said, just don't get involved because then that will get all the Arab nations. We need them on our side, and so forth and so on. So they sat the war out entirely, and we assembled this large multinational coalition under the auspices of the UN Security Council, which is another story. But, bottom line is, in the end, we tore right through Saddam Hussein's forces. But I think, frankly, he was better armed relative to us. He had a more credible military, frankly, than Iran does. I mean, Iran has got really no air force at all. And these missiles...
Not anymore.
Yeah,
to the extent they had one, they don't have
anymore. I'm just not very impressed because it's the 2020s now. And they're operating with technology from the 1970s and 80s at best.
Right.
And now that their command and control structure has been disrupted, I just, again, this isn't the Vietnam War anymore.
Right.
And I hope I'm right. I'm not sure. A commenter just remarked that Trump is a war criminal.
Right. I get them all here. I get them all.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, certainly the conditions under which this war was embarked upon are dubious. We've written that in the New American, the magazine that I publish. The fact that it kind of it started unconstitutionally, and we can talk about that. But now that we're in it, it seems to me to serve no good purpose to continue to wish ill upon American forces. And certainly, there's no question. What happened back in early January in 2 horrific days is beyond dispute. What that government did to its people. So I'm certainly happy for the Iranians as well as the Iranian diaspora around the world, assuming this comes to fruition. Having a free modern Iran akin to what we had prior to 1979 would definitely be an asset for the world, a good thing for the world going forward. But whether we're the ones that should be doing that, it does seem to me that it's more of a thing that that definitely impinges on Israel's national self-interest more directly than ours, to be sure. Mm-hmm. And so it's certainly appropriate that they be more involved in that, as they seem to be, involved in trying to take out the IRGC outposts and obviously working directly with people, informants on the ground, and helping to facilitate. So, we'll see how it goes. So I've very mixed feelings about it, because on one hand,
I do too.
Yeah, I don't like seeing the U.S. president, and this is far from the first instance where a U.S. president, Republican or Democrat, has essentially just taken the United States into a war without a congressional declaration. That is problematic. And even with
he's still within the confines of the Constitution right now. But after 60 days, he won't be, potentially.
It's definitely, I understand both sides of this issue, I think. But now that, we are where we are, for whatever reasons, I hope that it ends expeditiously, and I certainly hope and pray that it turns out for the better as far as the hard-pressed Iranian people are concerned. I travel through the Middle East quite frequently. I've never been to Iran. I've flown over it a few times. Would love to visit it. I've been to Pakistan and the Gulf states, but so it would be wonderful to see Iran join the modern world, and for the people to enjoy the freedom that they deserve. Particularly paying such a heavy price, in blood. But we'll see. So I tend to be optimistic about this. People have underestimated Trump and Netanyahu in the past. And usually, we heard all these dire warnings when the whole thing in Venezuela started. The quagmire. Where's the quagmire? Okay,
Right.
So,
well, he was looking for somebody with whom he could deal in Iran, and there was no one that he could deal with in Iran. And so then all of a sudden, Israel's taken everybody out like right and left. And the one guy he initially thought he might be able to deal with, he gone. He is dead, Laranjani. And so, that guy wasn't going to help.
Well, make no mistake, just because he doesn't look as crazy, he looks a little more urbane and professorial, doesn't mean he's not a mass murderer. He is.
Oh yeah.
These people are bad news. And, but that said, the world is full of nasty regimes. What's going on in Sudan right now is as bad or worse as what just happened in Iran. But nobody's arguing that we need to invade Sudan and save the people of Darfur. There seems to be a limitless supply of hapless, oppressed populations in distress, in need of some sort of rescue. And, obviously the founders and the post-founders, John Quincy Adams most notably, warned against this kind of mentality, that we really don't want to get involved in this sort of multilateralism, the peacekeeping, and going abroad in search of monsters to destroy, as he put it so eloquently, all the way back in 1820. So, we have definitely disregarded that advice, and we're now, as he warned, kind of entangled beyond all power of extrication, I think were his words, more or less, in all of the troubles of the world. And, so in that sense, having promised the likes of Japan and South Korea and the Philippines and all the nations of Western Europe our protection in one form or another, it becomes very problematic, morally problematic to say, hey, sorry guys, you're on your own now. You have to deal with yourself with the Russian hordes and the Chinese and the North Koreans and so forth and so on. So what's a superpower to do?
Right. Well, they just have to, as the Foundation for the Defense of Democracy says, you just got to get through it. That's it.
Yeah,
that's all
hopefully.
You can do.
And my hope is that, I remember a time when we weren't involved in every war that went on in the Middle East. That really, the Gulf War was where that really started. There was a little bit before that. Obviously, we stationed Marines in Lebanon for a while in the early 1980s. We know how that ended. And Reagan decided then, when a bunch of, a couple hundred of our Marines were killed by a suicide bomber in, what was that, 1982, I think it was.
83.
Preoccupied with the Cold War and the Soviet Union and didn't have time to worry about Middle Eastern terrorism, so we just pulled out. And so we really didn't get enquagmired in the Middle East until the Gulf War and its aftermath, because that the war went quickly and people were all rah-rah and patriotic, but somehow we never left. Then we decided, we have to impose this no-fly zone and garrison the Middle East to keep Saddam in his little pen that's imposed by Security Council mandate, and that went on for more than a decade. And then we decided, I guess we better invade again, and it just goes on and on and on. Unfortunately, interventionism, however high-minded, always creates this self-perpetuating rationale. And so it is my hope, I'm probably going to be disappointed, my hope that when this thing is over, that we're going to say to the nations of the Middle East, now it's your turn. Take care of your own affairs.
Yeah, I think that's where Trump's going, but let's hope we get there.
You can't depend on us to come in here and solve your problems all the time.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Well, I'm very happy that I'm hoping that the people of Iran will be, there's enough superstructure there that they'll be able to take over. There's certainly a lot in the diaspora that are watching and waiting and ready to go in to help them run things, but I'm not sure we want them to do that permanently. I
think too, again, arguing from the other point of view, and there may be merit to this, because I think it's important to have a modicum of humility when talking about these complex issues. There's a lot of information I'm not privy to. I personally doubt that Iran was weeks away from building its first nuclear device, although I don't doubt what they had boasted apparently to the U.S. in the negotiations, that they had enough to assemble enough material to build 16 nuclear bombs. That was a stupid thing for them to say if they actually said that. Mm-hmm. But that may have been true. But I do think strategically, there's no question that Iran is a critical part of that axis between Russia, China, Iran, and so forth. And if Iran comes over to our side, that's going to deal a tremendous. It's going to completely reconstitute geopolitics.
Absolutely.
Hopefully for the good. Because the reality is, Iran may not be able to threaten us with nukes, but Russia does routinely. People forget, and those of you out there who think that Putin is the cat's meow, he and his Medvedev and others have routinely threatened the use of nuclear weapons since the beginning of this Ukraine war. We've kind of been living under a Damoclean sword since that war started. And that most definitely does affect us, because while Russia's, infantry and, ground troops have proven less than effective against, their missiles work just fine. There's no doubt about that. And they could inflict tremendous damage, if not, destroy the United States outright. And China's not far behind them in terms of their development. They're a few thousand missiles behind at this point, but technologically, China is developing very rapidly. And I know wherever I speak, because I lived in China for 4 years, quite recently. I speak Chinese. I know
Wow.
how things work over there, and I understand just how much they hate us and have us, want to delete the United States of America. That is probably their number one strategic goal, possibly even more important than the seizure of Taiwan. So that is most definitely a real threat. And as long as Russia remains at war with Ukraine, that's very problematic as well. So perhaps this may enter into the thinking of the people who are doing the planning for this. The Iran war, it's not just about Iran, it's about really the entire world.
Thank you so much for coming on, talking to us about this. I really appreciate it. And this has just been very helpful, actually. Thank you, Dr. Steve Montez on the Adult in the Room podcast live stream. Okay. A couple of things that have gone on that I think, what do we know? Joe Kent decided he was going to quit today. Joe Kent. I love Joe Kent. And a couple of things on that the president talked about with respect to reaction to Joe Kent quitting his counterterrorism job today. And I'll show you his statement. Here's the reaction from the president.
I didn't know him well, but I thought he seemed like a pretty nice guy. But when I read his statement, I realized that it's a good thing that he's out, because he said that Iran was not a threat. Iran was a threat. Every country realized what a threat Iran was. The question is whether or not they wanted to do something about it. And many of the greatest military scholars are saying for years that presidents should have taken out Iran because they wanted a nuclear weapon. They were, if we didn't do the attack, or if I'll go a step further, if I didn't terminate the Iran nuclear deal given to us, one of the worst deals ever made by Barack Hussein Obama. Remember when they sent Boeing 757s over there, loaded with cash, hundreds of millions of dollars? You would have been very happy. This was a wonderful, they said hundreds of millions. People forget that. Does anybody remember? Right? You remember. Hundreds of millions of dollars in a Boeing 757. I think they had two of them loaded. They took the seats out and they put cash. And it was so much that there wasn't a bank in Virginia, Maryland, or D.C. that had any money left. They stripped them of all their money, put it into place, sent it to Iran, almost as ransom. That's not going to happen with Trump. And nobody ever did anything about it. Nobody ever said anything about it. Can you imagine if I did that? So they've been a threat for a long time, but they've really been a threat.
Okay, so I just cut him off there. Okay, so that's initially his reaction to Joe Kent leaving the Counterterrorism Center, working for Tulsi Gabbard at the Department of National Intelligence. And so that was a big job for a guy, former Green Beret, former CIA, paramilitary dude, Gold Star husband. He's remarried now, thank goodness. He has two boys. They're just adorable. I think very highly of Joe Kent. But I found this resignation just like, what the hell is going on here? Is this, oh, that's different. And so, let's get this off. So Joe Kent's reaction was to send a letter which talked about how this war, and I can't read it myself because I've put it instead of making it a document that I can just go to, I made it a photo, which means it's a lot smaller because, whatever. So, but bottom line is he blamed Israel for getting us into this war. I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah, I have every right to this phobia. I know, I understand that. Mark Travis says, I'm so old, I voted for Reagan in 1984. Okay, so this letter says that it was all Israel's dealing, and he had to get out because he could not, in good conscience, be a part of this government with this war in Iran, sorry, old habits. And so Carolyn Levitt, he says, after much reflection, I've decided to resign from my position at the Department of National Counterterrorism Center effective today. I cannot in good conscience support the ongoing war in Iran. Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation. And a lot of people have brought up this whole idea of imminent threat. Well, it does sound like it should be official. And it does sound like, oh gosh, this is something that should be U.S. policy and or the one rubric that by which we should all measure whether or not we should get involved in a conflict like this, in a war. And it's not there, actually. It's not there. That's international law to which we don't have to respond, nor do we have to abide. And so Joe Kent has put this out there like a big old smelly, dead fish in the middle of this whole thing. And it's hardly helpful at this time. If ever we needed a counterterrorism official, it's now, Joe Kent. And I know now the MSNBC or whatever they're calling it this week, MSNBC says, oh, this is great. He's just showing what a wonderful actor that he is, a straight shooter actor. This is after they have spent the last few years calling him a Nazi. Okay, so I don't want to hear from any of those people. Those people are not only uneducated about it, but they're stupid too. And so they've just multiplied the stupid factor. And I would like people to just stop the stupid. Can we just stop the stupid? The guy loves America, okay? He fought for America. His wife died for America in Syria after the troops were supposed to have been brought home under Trump 1, but the military, being so much smarter than Donald Trump, said, oh no, we're just going to pretend. We're going to pretend we don't have, we're just going to move around some troops and not take them out of Syria. Remember that one? And we're not going to tell him. He'll never know. So they committed an act of what could be, I think, labeled treason, and then got Joe Kent's wife killed by ISIS in Syria. Yeah. So, what military training have you been given? Okay. What's yours? And what is that even germane at this point? For this very moment, in this part of the conversation, how is this germane? You tell me. Oh, let's see. Liberals are Iran's strongest ally. Well, everybody needs they're idiots. He was and is a schmuck, according to this guy, who's asked me about my military experience, to which I have none. I respond to you. Let's see. Yeah. So, gentlemen who are doing the pissing contest and mine's bigger than yours with me about military service, you can just go take your limp one and take it and do something else with it, okay? Because I have no military experience, but I know what I'm seeing. So, and how would this change if I were, let's say, in, Joe Kent's outfit when he was a Green Beret? How would it change my mind about what I'm seeing here play out politically in front of me? Nothing. No, it would not change a thing. It would change nothing. Okay. But, so Joe Kent has decided to leave. I think it's a distraction. I think it's unhelpful. And I don't think it helps the America First brand, to which he said he was besotted. So, sorry, I can't help you. All right. Now we have the Strait of Hormuz situation, to which the president responded. And Trump, over the weekend, talked about it. Or maybe this was yesterday. I believe it was. Let's listen.
And well, we want to know, do you have any minesweepers? Well, would rather not get involved, sir. I said, for 40 years we're protecting you, and you don't want to get involved in something that is very minor. Very few shots going to be taken because they don't have many shots left. But they said, we'd rather not get involved. I just want the fake news media and everybody else to remember that was said, because I've been a big critic of all of the protecting of countries, because I know that we'll protect them And if we ever needed help, they won't be there for us. I've just known that for a long period of time, just like I knew about the Strait, that it would be a weapon.
So what he's talking about there, of course, is the fact that he asked Europe for help and said, hey, will you guys come and work with us on opening up the Strait of Hormuz, since you get energy from the Strait of Hormuz? And they said, all of them said no. Okay. And he goes, I knew that's what they were going to say. Yeah, who knows? He probably did, because he's been after these so-called NATO allies and anticipating that they would do nothing. And he said, yeah, I kind of figured they wouldn't. And here, look at this. It's a test. And they failed. And some of these comments coming in are very interesting, which means that every day is an IQ test. And some people pass and some people fail. All right. Here's Donald Trump in the 80s talking about, well, right? Here he is.
The respect of the other countries, then the other countries tend to do a little bit as you do, and you can create the right attitudes. The Iranian situation is a case in point. That they hold our hostages is just absolutely and totally ridiculous. That this country sits back and allows a country such as Iran to hold our hostages, to my way of thinking, is a horror. And I don't think they'd do it with other countries. I honestly don't think they'd do it with other countries.
Obviously, you're advocating that we should have gone in there with troops, etc., and brought our boys out.
I absolutely feel that, yes. I don't think there's any question, and there's no question in my mind. I think right now would be an oil-rich nation, and I believe that we should have done it, and I'm very disappointed that we didn't do it, and I don't think anybody would have held us in abeyance. I don't think anybody would have been angry with us, and we had every right to do it at the time. I think we've lost the opportunity.
He's probably right. And that back in the day, and it was 47 years after that he finally took action on Iran. It's about time. Now, what happens? Well, plenty. We have higher gas prices. Shoot, people are complaining about the high gas prices. They're getting probably within $2 of California's and Washington and Oregon's gas prices. I mean, we all know those are high. And, it's so interesting that Democrats continue to complain about the cost of gas because of this conflict, this war. And yet they were totally fine with it when they imposed those high prices. The other day, the list of graphs, a graph of states, and all of their taxes and fees and all the stuff that they put on gasoline, and how much more the state takes than do the oil companies. Very interesting. And it's interesting because you should know that they're screwing you over too. So they're taking more. Their gas prices are going to be higher. Shoot, they will be bumping up if this thing goes on for too long and Trump can't open the Strait of Hormuz. They will be bumping up by a couple more bucks. So they could be close to $6, $7 in California, Oregon, and Washington. Mostly Washington and California. So here's another story that is all part and parcel of this issue. And it happened over the last few days where they had the attack on the Jewish school. Okay? And the attack on the Jewish school resulted in one person dying, and that was the bad guy. And the bad guy, according to the New York Times, well, he was motivated to do this because, after all, his brother and his cousins, or niece and nephew, I think is more accurate. His cousins, niece and nephew, died in a hail of hell coming out from the sky from either Israel or the United States of America. Oh, wow, that's terrible. Yeah, you know why they were killed? Well, because they were members of Hezbollah. Remember Hezbollah? Those are the people who have been pounding Israel from the north for years. These are the people who help drop bombs on Israel, who throw in all kinds of munitions to kill people. This is the organization that's to blame for people not being able to live in their homes. So, I mean, are we sad about this? That the Hezbollah guys got the crap beaten out of them? No, nobody's sad. But the New York Times was kind of sad. Here's the New York Times headline. This is just unbelievable. Talking about how sad he was. Well, I got to find the story. It was how sad he was because he was just he's just a misunderstood guy. He was a guy who couldn't, he was just fueled by grief. Just a poor kid, poor man. This is just unbelievable. Check this out. So, hold on. I'm going to share my screen. I think this is it. Yeah, here we go. Let me take that down. This New York Times coverage of the Michigan synagogue attack. What is this, the fourth one over the past few days? Let's see. We had the shooting in Austin. We had the other attack in New York. We had a third one. And now this one? So that's perfectly okay, right? New York Times coverage of Michigan synagogue attack prompts bipartisan backlash. Biden's anti-Semitism envoy, Republican members of Congress denounce what the New York Times reported. New York Times is drawing a bipartisan condemnation for its coverage of an attack on a synagogue in Michigan that critics faulted for seeming to justify the attack. Synagogue attacker lost family members in Lebanon airstrike. Gee, could you more passive voice it? That was the headline that they put on one of their articles following this attempted terror attack of a school, a Jewish school, where 100 little pumpkins were in there going to school. Synagogue attacker lost family members in Lebanon airstrike. The Times failed to mention that, according to the Israeli government, at least one of the family members, and it turns out it was both of them, was a Hezbollah terrorist. The Times quoted an anonymous Lebanese official who said that the members were not Hezbollah members. That may seem like a subtle detail, but it generates a totally different storyline. The Times headline in the story basically conveys grieving guy takes revenge for innocent family members killed by Israel. The other would be more like a would-be murderer in Michigan was a terrorist fanatic like his brother in Lebanon. So this is from the Washington Free Beacon. It wrote a piece up on it, and they did a treatment on this, talking about how the treatment of various news events colors the way we perceive the issue. Yes, obviously, this is true. The Times eventually published an online March 15th article that reported that intelligence reveals brother of terrorist behind U.S. synagogue attack was a Hezbollah terrorist. Both of them. Both of his brothers and both of his family members were. So anyway, it goes on, but he was denounced. The New York Times was denounced summarily by people of left and right persuasions. Like, really? That's all you can do? That's how you are getting along here? That's how you're reporting the news? You know, a lot of people know about, they're probably pretty good stewards of and consumers of news, and that sucks. You know, I will turn to the New York Times occasionally because you can have your own opinion, which I do. You can have your own opinion, but you can't have your own facts. And sometimes the New York Times actually puts in the facts. They may put them in the 24th paragraph, the ones that you find compelling and or a way in which one might be able to discern what's really going on in the story. But yeah, most people don't. If they're reading a print version, it's like too long to read. Yeah, I don't want that. It's on the jump page or something like that. Yeah. Oh, here we go. No, he was a Hezbollah brother of the. Yeah, but didn't being proved, but that his family building is proved. He's, according to the latest news, his family members were Hezbollah, and he's seen going out and buying munitions, a bunch of fireworks. Who sells fireworks in March, by the way? Does anybody, or is that just like a West Coast thing? Is that just how they do it here? Well, you can't do it until a week before 4th of July. You can't buy these things. Hey, Chihuahua. Yeah. Everything against Jewish people is anti-Semitic, dear Lord. Well, what? How is it not? I guess it could be incidental. When you go to a Jewish school and you want to blow them up, you want to blow up the little children because you want to make it shock and awe, and you drove your car into the building and brought a can of gasoline to set on fire so all your munitions would go off, creating a firestorm out of which no one could escape? Yeah, I'd say that's anti-Semitic, wouldn't you? Is somebody complaining about that? Ay, ay, ay. So, bad actors on both sides. And of course, the overweening question here is, what the heck was that guy doing in this country? How is it that guy was in this country? I'm not the only one asking. A lot of people are.
Taft confirms that a week before the attempted massacre at Temple Israel, Israeli Defense Forces killed the commander of a specialized Hezbollah unit in Lebanon that's responsible for launching hundreds of rockets towards Israeli civilians during the war with Iran. A few days after that Israeli airstrike, you can see Ayman Mohammed Ghazali, the brother of that Hezbollah commander, in this surveillance video we obtained in Michigan, where he bought more than $2,000 worth of fireworks. On Thursday, the FBI says the naturalized U.S. citizen plowed into Temple Israel with all of those fireworks and gasoline in the back of his truck, while more than 100 little kids were inside the building for preschool. Miraculously, no one was killed besides the suspect, who the FBI says took his own life after getting into a shootout with security.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so bad actor upon what is he doing in this country? He's got citizenship. Do we not do any vetting? How's that? Okay. We need to vet people before they come into this country. Duh. And we need to make sure that if they somehow get into this country and they're illegally here, they can't vote. Wouldn't that be a great idea? And so it is that we have the SAVE Act being given a little baby boost today by the U.S. Senate, where they are currently trying to debate the issue of whether or not they're going to debate the issue. Don't take my word for it. This is what they're doing. I think this is Rick Scott from Florida. And let's see if we can see what he's saying right now. Turn up the sound here.
Why should voting in our elections, something that dictates the direction of our country and is essential to building trust in government, have a lower ID standard than buying a six-pack of beer or a lottery ticket? The answer is simple. It shouldn't. When the minority leader isn't calling minorities and women too stupid to show ID and register to vote, he's claimed that we can't pass this bill because President Trump is trying to rig the elections. He's lying, and he's telling on himself. The minority leader and Democrats think that stopping illegal aliens from voting in American elections is rigging the system. Now, that's a remarkable thing for them to admit. But when they tell you who they are, we have to listen. What's clear to me is Democrats don't think they can win. They don't think they can win unless we allow people who are not legally allowed to vote to cast a ballot. Clearly, the minority leader is more concerned about what passing the Save America Act would mean for his future as majority leader than he is about.
Would somebody explain
faith in our democracy,
why it is
delivering for the American people?
And I'll just pause Rick Scott here for a second. I realize that you're going to why don't you let him talk? Yes, I will. Just a moment. Why is it that on an issue that is so overwhelmingly popular, which would require people registering to vote to prove that they're legally in this country and a citizen, why would they be against that? Why are the Democrats officially all out of this? They don't want any part of this. Will you explain to me why that is in the comments section, please? Why don't Democrats like this? That's all. That's all I want to know. Let's go back to Rick Scott. Here we go.
George Soros and the radical left will try to convince you that their opposition to this bill is about fairness and integrity. It's about protecting American democracy. Don't listen to them. It's not fair for illegals to vote in American elections. I don't get to vote in the French elections or the British elections or the Canadian elections. It's not fair to let men compete in women's sports. It's not fair to allow the mutilation of children with gender reassignment surgery for minors. The fact is that fairness, integrity, and our future are on the line. It's this bill that will protect them. It's what Senator Lee and I and so many others are fighting for today as we once again call on this body to pass the Save America Act. I urge my colleagues to support it. I yield back my time.
So then we're going to have, let's see what we got.
Mr. President, the senator from Montana.
Mr. President, there's some issues we consider so logical and so obviously rooted in common sense that I got to believe the American people are sitting at home and wonder why Congress is even having this debate. And such is the case with the bill the U.S. Senate is considering this week, the Save America Act. Let me be clear, the bill before us today requires proof of citizenship when registering to vote, and it requires photo ID in order to vote in a federal election. If you
They
come to
hate
my
that.
office here in Washington, D.C., you'll see fairly quickly I'm an avid outdoorsman. There's a lot of hunting and fishing pictures on the walls that say a lot about the great state of Montana. As many know, Montana has some of the very best outdoor recreation in the country, even the world. Hunting, fishing, backpacking, you name it. I remember growing up in Montana, my grandpa and my dad had a fly rod in my hand when I was still a little boy, before fly fishing was cool even, back in the early 70s. I remember fly fishing before Brad Pitt discovered it with Robert Redford and made the movie A River Runs Through It. And do you know, if you want to fish in Montana, you want to fly fish, if you want to get a tag to hunt, you want to shoot a mule deer or an elk or a whitetail, you know what you need to get a tag, to get a fishing license? You got to produce a valid ID. To go fishing, you need a license. And to get a license, you need a valid ID.
Okay, I'm going to pause him for just a moment because during this program, we did find out that the vote to continue this, to take it to a debate, has passed. So looking here at Axios, Senate Republicans Tuesday voted to launch debate on the Save America Act, but Majority Leader John Thune is well short of the 60 votes needed for passage. And here's Axios. Why it matters. President Trump is trying to strong-arm Senate Republicans into passing the sweeping measure, which would require proof of citizenship and photo ID to vote before the November midterms. Is there a problem with that? What's the problem with that? Lawmakers voted 51-48 on Tuesday to remove the Save America Act past a procedural hurdle. Alaska Senator Lisa Murkowski was the only Republican who voted against advancing the bill. Oh, so Mitch McConnell voted for it, and Tom Tillis must have voted for it. No Democrats voted to advance the legislation. Tuesday's vote, Axios assures us, is part of Thune's plan to try to let off some MAGA steam over an issue that Trump and his supporters say is central to democracy. Gosh, why would that be a thing? Is that all? But Thune does not have the votes to change the Senate filibuster rules and lower the threshold for the bill's passage to a simple majority as MAGA world is demanding. Well, they should have done it that way. The other side, Democrats have blasted the legislation, arguing it would disenfranchise voters and make it easier to steal an election. Really? Requiring someone to have photo ID and proof of citizenship, and then only having to show your ID that you have to do at the liquor store all from now on till eternity. That's onerous, really? Yeah, okay. Crazy people. MAGA Republicans trying to rig democracy and disenfranchise American citizens, said Chuck Schumer. Okay, Chuck. Which is why I was like, what's that Montana senator doing? What's he up to? He's talking about fly fishing because they're talking now. Okay, this is going to go on for a long time. We're not going to play this, by the way.
Great outdoors. So why does the left protest so hard against ID requirements?
Think of disabled people out in the country with no transportation. Do you realize how far they have to travel sometimes? The poorest of us are disenfranchised. Would you stop it? You get free rides to go vote at a precinct place. You get free ID to do this as well. For those who can't afford it, they get free money to go buy it. And Medicare, Medicaid have free rides. That's to doctors and stuff, but I mean, that's just still a good point. After the debacle of this current administration, Republicans can kiss midterms goodbye. Oh, you know what I think? Maybe I flatter myself a little bit, but I really feel as if people give a flying flipping frittata about the sanctity of their vote. Why is it an 80-20 issue if it's not that big of a deal?
More bipartisan issue right now facing us in Washington.
Okay.
People want to restore trust in their elections and their government. So why is this so hard? I'll tell you why it's so hard. Our friends on the other side of the aisle are captive to their radical base. I grew up as the grandson of a Democrat in Montana. My dad was a Democrat growing up. But this is a different kind of Democrat today. The radical base is steering the party that we debate with across the aisle here in Washington. Remember, under Joe Biden's border catastrophe, at least 10 million, and that's a conservative number, 10 million illegal aliens poured into the country unchecked. And in many states, these illegal aliens are eligible for...
We could use sugar.
Oh, look, we get a commercial. Thanks.
Easier and cheaper, but we
Oh, never mind.
Hi, I'm Catherine. I'm one of the founders.
And that's why you need to have...
It's Catherine. She's a founder of something.
That's why the Save America...
Okay, so this is the Associated Press. I was initially looking for C-SPAN. This is the debate that's going to go on. It's going to be truly among the most boring conversation that you'll ever see. And the reason I say that is because they're going to have to talk for a long, long time, and they'll have to call for a vote. They'll have to get past cloture, and then the Republicans can say, well, we tried. And you have to say to yourself, well, why is it such a big sell to get people to want to require identification and proof of citizenship to register to vote and vote? Why is that such a big ask? It's not. Other people in other states do it. It's just absurd. Oh, yeah. See, people who are disabled are chiming in now after somebody saying, Jude, can you think of all the disabled people that can't get to a place to get ID? disabled people? Are they on some sort of government program whereby they have to have ID? Whereby they could use that ID to show that they are in the country legally and are a citizen so that they can vote? Ay, ay, ay. Okay. All right. So the debate goes on. We are not going to go on with this conversation in terms of this guy because it's going to get even crazier. All right. So one of the reasons that I bring this up is because, of course, it's fundamental to the, I think, sanctity of our vote. And I don't think if you have free votes, you have a country, really. You can have a country, but, oh, yeah, you're going to fix our, fix the vote count and impersonate voters. And I know that this is an issue. People say, oh, yeah, they don't find too many people and prosecute too many people who have defrauded the voting rules of their states. Yeah, I suppose vis-a-vis the number of people voting, you don't. But what you don't see is the fact that people are impersonating voters, not just voting willy-nilly, not just stealing the ballots out of mailboxes and stuff happens all the time. We've seen that. But in California, they had a situation just last week, wasn't it just last week, wherein these guys were on the streets of San Francisco. Let me see if I can find this. It's just absurd. Stand by here. On the streets of San Francisco, and they were lining people up. They were the homeless guys and guys that are drugs, and that was great. And okay, so let's see, ballot. I'll just put petition in there. I wasn't planning to share this today, so I apologize. I just wrote a story about it the other day, so I do happen to have it. All right. So what they did was they were on the streets. There's a line of people. And some guy comes up. He's a street photographer, just JSG. And just some guy. And he comes up and asks, well, hey, what are you guys waiting in line for? And they're waiting in line to get paid to sign a signature petition. And they are signing, not in their name, they're signing in someone else's name because they have a list of people whose names can be used for these ne'er-do-wells to impersonate, who are standing in line getting paid $5 to sign a petition. That's illegal. It's illegal to offer anything of value. It's illegal to take anything of value for your signature. Furthermore, it's illegal to sign a name that's not your own on an official document like that. And yet, this sort of thing happens all the time when it comes to voting. There's your defrauding. There's your vote fraud that you can't prove because if you're not checking signature verification, you can't check the veracity of the signature, which in California, they don't. So you can impersonate anybody. And that's what happened. And so now even the state of California Secretary of State's office is looking into it. Even the person in charge of the Civil Rights Division of the DOJ is looking into it. It's a real thing. It's a real thing. But that is just, I wrote a story about it, as I said. That is something that happens in the voting process, not just in petition signature gathering for initiatives. Yeah. You can't prove it. That's why when we talk about voter integrity here, because I've been taught by the integrity people in the state of California, you got to talk about impersonation because that's really what this is. And so that is something we should watch out for. Why are they opposed to voter identification? Why are they opposed to checking to see if someone's legal to vote? California has outlawed asking for signatures, asking for ID, I should say. They've outlawed it. Yes. Yeah, bottom line, the agenda of the left is control the government, disenfranchise of the conservative vote. The only way they can control our nation is to make it possible for illegal people illegally here to vote. And I think that's one of the reasons why Joe Biden let them all in. That's what was the deal. What was the deal? Okay, it is the St. Paddy's Day celebration, and I wanted to bring to you some wonderful music that I gathered and some dancing. 2 years ago, I went to Ireland, and the opening of this program is the sounds of the fantastic Foxy Johns in Dingle, Ireland. And this was among many of our stops when we saw some folks performing in a pub, and I wanted to bring it to you to celebrate. You know, a little levity after all this heaviness. Have a great day, everybody. Enjoy the... Thank you so much for watching and listening to this episode of the Adult in the Room podcast. We do not take you for granted. We appreciate every single person who tunes in every week to listen and watch this program. We're here every Tuesday and Thursday, live streaming on Rumble, and then on every other podcast platform shortly thereafter when we can port it over and get it over there as soon as we can. All the shows can be found at victoriataft.com, where the censorship regime has been banned by me. Follow me on social media at these names: Victoria Taft, the Adult in the Room podcast, and the Victoria Taft Show. Send media inquiries, or any others for that matter, to victoria@victoriataft.com. And here's a big ask. Would you please subscribe, share, like, comment, recommend, and give this program a 5-star rating where you can? We really appreciate it. We do not take that for granted either. Follow my work at, you guessed it, victoriataft.com. PJ Media, I write tons over there. Flamingo Audiobooks, and of course the radio. I don't do this alone. This show is produced and engineered by Overall Media. 1A Cast is responsible for some of the Adult in the Room podcast's imaging. Logo design by Hageman Creative. The Adult in the Room podcast is produced at Flamingo Road Studios. All rights reserved.